Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, today we're going to be talking about uh, changing the NHL playoff format. And so, it's a subject that's come up, I think it was a couple weeks ago when I don't know if he started it, but he definitely commented, was Sidney Crosby. He was saying about how the league should go back to 1 versus 8 seedings, um, or in the standings, however you want to put it. I don't know if he was the one that started all the conversations or if it started before him and he commented. Anyways, basically, this was as the seedings were getting determined and the matchups and things like that. And in my opinion, what always seems to happen is whenever the Leafs are against a team they don't want to play against in the first round, the subject comes up. So it's as if, for one, Leafs fans and Leafs related reporters kind of dictate topics and things like that, what's going on in the news. And second, that they complain a lot. So, anyway, so I don't really like the fact that the Leafs fans complain so much about the. I mean, it's because you're against Tampa 2 years in a row. I think it's been. So I get it. I mean, they're a tough team, but like everybody's got to face tough teams. So, anyways, so you kind of already know where I sit on the subject about changing the format, and I also did a short on the subject, like a YouTube short. I don't really think a change is, for one, necessary, two, warranted, three, gonna make a difference, and so on. So, anyways, I'm not in favor of a change, but nonetheless, we'll take a look. And there's some different formats that I actually don't dislike, and I'm not against 1 versus 8 either, really. It's just changing. There's got to be a good justification for it, and personally, I just don't see it. But anyways, we'll discuss the subject all the same. We're going to have a look at different leagues, what they do for the playoffs, what the NHL did previously, and things like that. So just 1 second to pull up one last thing because I didn't have it pulled up. And if you've seen my streams before, you know everything's done on the spot, no prep work except for the subject. In this case, I managed to gather some links just to other leagues and their playoff formats. But the one thing I just remembered about that I forgot to pull up was previous NHL playoff formats, because I know it's been 1 versus 8, but I don't know if there's been anything other than 1 versus 8 divisional and stuff like that. There we go. So maybe that's a good place to start. And actually, you guys won't need anything else. So we'll just move this here, and I can share screen. Okay, so just to start with the first thing that I just commented on, was there, or what were the other formats? Regional 6. I'm going to have a quick scan through here. 4 teams in each division qualifying. 4, 8, 12, 16. Interconference? Wait. Playoff format remain largely the same. 4 teams. All series. The division champions battling for the Stanley Cup. Oh, because there was only Western and Eastern Division. Sorry, I'm thinking of the current format, so it's not that there's 4. So that means 8 teams made the playoffs. Yeah, that makes sense. Interconference playoff. It's probably easier if I just take a look at the brackets. So 8 teams and 70, 71. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Wait, so then, what was it this season? 1, 3, 2, 4. Well, what was it previous season? It's the same. That doesn't make any difference. Okay. 18 teams under the system, 12 teams qualified for the playoffs. Okay. And what happened that season? Oh, okay, so... Okay, that makes sense. So that's the first time it looks like when it was... I hope you can see this. When it went just top first to last as opposed to like a division or conference or whatever. Okay. Okay, and then this is apparently different. Four, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6. What? Oh, okay. But wait, that... Man, this is so confusing. What the heck did they do? The top team from each division would earn a bye to the quarterfinals. Okay. Where did Chicago come into this? This makes no sense. At least visually, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. from a best of 3 preliminary round. Whoa. Okay, so how is Chicago this is what I don't understand is Chicago is 7th here, but they didn't. What? See, this is even a learning process for me because, like, I mean, I wasn't watching hockey. I mean, I wasn't alive for these seasons, but top team. Okay, so in 74, 75, top team from each division would earn a bye to the quarterfinal. Second and third place teams from each division started their playoff run from a best of 3 preliminary round. Each round of the playoffs, the teams remaining were seeded regardless of divisional or conference alignment. Okay. Seeded regardless of divisional. Okay, so then that's based on regular season performance, I guess. Okay, because wait, so Philly was top, so they get a bye. Pittsburgh was what? Buffalo was 1. Montreal was 1, and Vancouver. But why does Montreal face Vancouver if they're both the top? Shouldn't Montreal... Oh, or did somebody... So Pittsburgh Islanders, did they finish ahead of Vancouver? Pittsburgh... Yes. Islanders, yes. Okay, so that makes sense now. So, okay, so what it is that they get seeded after the preliminary round into their spots based on the standings. So now that makes sense, but that made no sense before. So then it goes to 1, 1-8, 2-7, and so on. Okay, that makes sense now. Jeez. And then had one minor change. Although the second place finishers from each division would qualify for the preliminary round. The 4 playoff spots reserved for the third place teams. 1, 2, 4 wildcard spots. Okay, sure. So basically it's just another format of going based on the standings. Okay. Divisional matchups. Top 4 teams from each division qualifying for the playoffs. Okay, so then that's the start of essentially our current format. Mind you, it sounds like it's, or I'm certain it's changed. Adams, Patrick, Norris. Oh, there we go. It's just formatted different. That's weird. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay, so that's the same essentially as the current format. Okay. Modern era. Okay, that talks about the so that went to conference base, so that must have been 1 and 8. Yeah. Okay. And then from there into 2 conferences of is that 6? Atlantic, Northeast, Southeast. No way. So there was 6 divisions. I don't remember that at all. And it's the top 2. Okay. Resulting in qualifiers remain 16, but the seeding changed. First, the 3 first place teams in each division qualified. First through third, okay. Of the other teams in each conference, the top 5 finishers qualified. Okay. So this one actually, funny enough, I kind of like it. More than now, splitting it into 6 divisions. Top 3, and then you just reseed the rest. But then there's all the, the rivalries and all that stuff. Maybe it's not. You know what? No, it is better. I prefer that because, I mean, you'll still get the rivalries, but then it's like a combination of the 1 versus 8 and the divisional stuff. But then how does it... So wait. But then you don't get the divisional matchups. It's just 1 versus 8 basically, but you get 3 first seeds basically. I don't know. I don't dislike it. And then after that, it comes through to today, basically. So this one's an interesting one. Because it's kind of a combo. So anyways, so we don't really need this anymore, I don't think. Keep that. That I have open for another thing. Okay, and then this is nowadays thing, as most people would know. It's 4 divisions, top 3 in each division, and then the wild card spot goes into whoever finished first in the conference. So everybody kind of knows that. I don't really need to go over it. Yeah, and if you're not familiar with it, I mean, you can have a look. What I'll do is I'll add these all in the description after I'm done this stream. But anyways, like I said, most of you guys would already know the current format. Okay, so anyways, so that's historic. We're just going to go briefly we'll go into some other leagues, their playoff formats. Some kind of brief and other ones not as brief, but still probably most of them we'll go through relatively briefly. So I wouldn't be doing the whole discussion justice if I didn't talk about soccer. There's UEFA Champions League. It's a home and away, and I mean, there's no point in really going into the finer details, but a home and away to decide a series is just way too quick in my opinion. So don't like it, but that's an option in theory. Maybe that would justify a 1 versus 16 and kind of do that sort of bracket, but yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just to bring it up as a thought, but I don't really like the idea, and I don't think anybody that's a hockey fan would really like it. Next, we'll just briefly talk about the playoff format for the Calder Cup, so the AHL playoffs. So they do a best of 3. I believe second round is best of 5. And then after that, yeah, so So each division has a best of 3 series in the first round to determine the top 16 teams for the division semifinals, with teams getting byes based on performance. So first and second get a bye. Then third, 4, 5, 6 have to play. And then it's also based on number of teams, I think, in the division too. So not quite the same as the NHL, but I mean, in theory, you could realign so that there was different divisions like this. Maybe there's more in one division than another, but I think that complicates things, and then it doesn't make things even. So I don't really like that as an idea. But anyways, in theory, you could go. You could go essentially to a wild card round that's 3 games, and then have the division semifinals to go to 5 games, then 7, 7, 7, I believe is how it goes. Division semifinals of the playoffs continuing. No, so the division finals, so it goes 3, 5, 5, 7, 7. So I'm just bringing that up for the thought of shorter rounds earlier on and more teams, and then longer rounds later on with the lesser teams. So again, another thought that you could consider. Now, this is where we go into other leagues that I'm not as familiar as I used to be with, because I don't watch sports highlights anymore. So baseball, how does it even work? So there's wild card, then division, then conference championships, and then World Series, I believe. So wild card is, so the first two get a bye, it looks like, from each conference, and then the rest are all from wild cards. I think is how that works. We're revised to use head-to-head records to break any ties, blah, blah, blah. Two best divisional winners get a first-round bye. 3 wildcard teams are 4th, 5th, and 6th. Oh, okay. So third place goes against 6th. Yeah. So I mean, it's basically, according to standings, it's just teams get byes, the top 2. And are those series shorter? So wild card, yeah, it looks like it's best of 3. And then division goes best of 5. Then 7-7, I believe. That's what it looks like. So basically the concept is just teams getting byes. And I think this, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same as NFL, is it not? No, it's just one team. So that's, I guess, the difference. And actually, so I was going to save them for later, but might as well just do them now too. Yeah, so NFL is kind of similar to MLB, so Major League Baseball. Except the difference is that 2 get a bye in baseball and 1 gets a bye in football. Yeah. I guess, I mean, so I was thinking that maybe I was going to talk about things more. Oh, that's what I was going to do is populate things as if we were using the standings, but really, I mean, I don't really know what that's going to accomplish. Yeah, I was going to do that, but I mean, really, if I go and I plug in the teams, I mean, you could do that, and what is it going to really tell us? It's just going to show us different matchups, and then big deal. I guess we're kind of, I think it's more important just to talk about concepts as opposed to applying it, really. And there's So there is reseeding in the NFL. There's not reseeding, it doesn't look like, in baseball. Is there another way to get to this? Yeah, so no reseeding. Okay. So I guess that's a bit of a difference too. So there's so in baseball there's more buys, no reseeding. NFL, fewer buys, there is reseeding. So I mean there's so many different ways to do playoffs. Those are just, I guess, a couple examples, but they're very similar in concepts at least. Yeah. And how many teams are in the NFL? It's 32, right? Yeah. So there's 32 in the NFL. There are how many in baseball? Is it? Oh, only 30. So that makes sense why baseball would have that sort of format. Because there's fewer teams. So there's fewer teams, which means fewer teams make it to the playoffs. And then as a result, there's a wild card to kind of make the number of teams correct, and also with the number of buys. So that makes sense based on the number of teams, and likewise for the NFL based on the number of teams. Now there's 14 of 32. This one has 12 of 30, was it? Let's do the math. So 14 divided by 32 is 43.75%. 12 of 30 is 40%. NHL is 50%. So more teams make the playoffs. And I actually don't like that myself, having too many teams make the playoffs. But anyways, that's kind of besides the point right now. Okay, so that kind of covers baseball. Football. And I don't need this open, I don't think, anymore. Okay, and then we've got the NBA, which is, they have a play-in tournament which uses the Page McIntyre system. So basically, the way to describe it, if you're not familiar, is it goes, so you can kind of see it visually here. So the top two teams play. Winner of that goes on to the next round. Loser of that, winner of that goes through to the final of the play-ins. Loser of that has to go to the next round, basically. And then the two lower seed teams, lower than those two seeds, play against each other. The winner of that goes against the loser of the higher seeded teams, and then the winner of that plays the winner of the higher seeded teams from earlier. So you can kind of see it visually. It all kind of makes more sense than me describing it by words. So yeah, and then so that determines the final 2 seeds for each conference. So then that, as a result of that, then technically there's so 2 extra teams per conference. So that's 10 times 2, 20. And there's how many teams in the NBA? Is it 30? Wow. So so that's 20 of 30 teams make the playoffs, basically. That's crazy. So wait, so let me just make sure I'm not making a mistake here. So yeah, there's 4 from each conference. And then Miami. So wait, give me a sec. Oh, there we go. Yeah, sorry, I was looking. They have the bracket switch. So Atlanta, Miami is 7-8. So Atlanta, Miami. And then Lakers, Minnesota. Oops. Lakers, Minnesota. Okay, so I don't know why I have this tab open. Okay, so yeah, basically it's, I mean, man, that's a lot of teams. So it's 10 per conference. Oh, that's why I had it open, is because number of teams. So 10 per conference. 20 divided by 30. 66.7% of teams technically make the playoffs. That's nuts. I really don't like that. So basically that gives you another format. And so this is kind of similar to, I was going to pull it up, but it's more complicated because of just not number of different conferences and stuff. So in the college World Series of Baseball, which, by the way, we were the champions, Mississippi State, in 2021. Pretty cool. So anyways, yeah, it's all complicated because there's so many different conferences and seedings, and it's similar in concepts to the NBA, where it has that so you win, you go forward, you lose, you play again, and then you can only really lose once, and then otherwise you have to keep winning, kind of thing, basically. So it just gives opportunities for higher teams to lose once and continue through, but there's lesser games. And I don't really like lesser games. I like things to be decided in best ofs. So you could technically do both this and a best of. So you could do, in theory, the 7 versus 8 best of 3, 9 versus 10 best of 3, and then do the same thing this next round, best of 3, and then the final seeds go in. But that makes for a really long lead up into the actual playoffs, because there's two extra rounds before we even get into the actual playoffs, where you have in the NBA 16 teams. So it would make for a really long playoffs. And so I don't like that idea, but it's possible as well. So just to kind of recap and consider these as concepts. So before I do that, I'm just going to apply this to the NHL using 3-game series to make it also kind of make sense, which is why I have another tab open. So currently in the NHL, there's 82 games, as most of you would know. What you could do, so what happens in divisional play is you play teams 3 or 4 games. And so if you got rid of the 4 games, the times where it's 4 games, because you don't want to make the regular season longer, in the NHL at least, just because of injuries and wear and tear and all that kind of stuff. You'd want to make it shorter, and then if you made it shorter and everybody plays each other 3 times, then you could do these best of 3 play-ins and make it work where the actual number of games is going to be similar to what it currently is. So just as a concept, that's where something that the NHL could do. The negative about that is that the teams that get all the buys into the actual playoffs, they play less games, and probably for league revenue, that's not a good thing, because those are the better teams, of course. So they play less games. Maybe the revenue's less. Maybe it's better because there's play-ins. It's really hard to say. But that's just an argument kind of for and against. So you get less of the better teams playing, more of the lesser teams playing. But you add in more credibility to the play-ins by having a best of 3 versus just single games. So those are some cons, just different ways that you could kind of structure it. And like I said, to add more credibility, to have best of 3. So just some ways that you could reorganize it and make it work. So now I can leave that. So that's just something I wanted to comment on before kind of summarizing. So and I can close that. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. If we did 1 versus 8, so there's basically 3 ways that the NHL kind of has historic roots that could be reapplied. So there's the current format, which is divisional, with the wild card spot. So top 3, so it goes 1 versus wild card. Actually, I might as well have it visually pulled up so you can see it. I closed it. So, like I was saying, so 1 versus wild card, 2 versus 3 for each division, and then they continue through. There's no reseeding required because you're still interdivisional. And then it goes to conference finals. Again, no reseeding because you're still conference. Interdivisional. I was going to say interconferential. But anyways, so it's interconference finals, so no reseeding required. And then you have the Stanley Cup finals, which is each conference against each other. Then there's another option, which is you could do 1 versus 8. You could do 1 versus 8, no reseeding. You could do 1 versus 8. No reseeding kind of wouldn't make sense because you already did the 1 versus 8. So really you would have it where it's 1 versus 8 and then you just reseed each round. Or then the other option, which is essentially the same, just more broadly, you could go 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, and so on, and then reseed each round. So those are kind of like the 3 NHL formats, more or less. There's some of those weird ones with wild cards where, anyways, it was just kind of different. But yeah, so those are the main 3. And you could argue that, so the divisional creates better rivalries. The 1 versus 8 is kind of a mix between the two, where there's some rivalry because it's in the conference, but not entirely because you're not like forced to play each other all the time. Basically, a great example is like the complaints that kind of rooted these discussions this year, which is Toronto-Tampa. So that's good because of rivalry. It's bad because you're stuck playing the same teams every season, it seems like, until, team quality changes. So yeah, rivalries, good, but you're stuck playing the same teams. And then if you go 1 versus 8, there's less of those rivalries, but there's still kind of, because you're still playing in your conference. You play each other more often throughout the season, so there's kind of a mix. And then it's also a bit more fair because you have best versus worst of the conference, and then it's all reseeded through, so the better teams get the more favorable matchups, which is fair because otherwise, what's the point in the regular season? That's kind of a problem with the divisional format, because you could do great in the regular season and then you're just stuck against tough team after tough team after tough team. So, for example, let's say Boston and Toronto go through. Boston and Toronto play each other the next round, where you might have like a Carolina and a New York, where those teams are kind of, I forget exactly where they sat in the standings, but basically you might have weaker teams going through in one division, getting all the way to the conference finals, whereas in another one you have just nothing but tough teams all the way through to the conference finals. So it makes it tougher for the top teams when it's divisional, whereas if it's 1 versus 8, it makes it more fair and kind of weights the regular season kind of more fairly, in my opinion. And then finally, of course, there's the 1 versus 16, where there's the seedings are all based on, there's no conference seedings basically. It's just top versus bottom, and then you would, I guess you would have to reseed every round, and then that completely weights the regular season appropriately, and the whole way through, it's kind of fair based on the regular season. So it's kind of degrees of fairness versus the regular season versus intensity of rivalries, which might be more profitable for the NHL. I really don't know what the numbers would indicate or what the numbers are, because I don't think the league reports any of that kind of stuff. So, so those are kind of like the pros and cons of each. And then kind of contrasting that with the other leagues. So you've got baseball, which does fewer teams. So there's, what was it? So it was 40% of teams go into the playoffs. So I like that a lower percentage makes the playoffs than what the NHL currently has. So what you could do is buys. So kind of go back to this format here. So maybe the top two get buys, and you get rewarded for doing well in the regular season, and it allows you to rest up your teams going into the later, like the next rounds for the playoffs. I kind of like that idea, because we're discovering it this season. I mean, we see it every season, but so for example, Bergeron's been out for Boston, Krejci's been out for Boston. You have some lingering injuries that teams have to play with, and so it kind of makes it unfair. So not only are you having the rivalries where you're playing against really tough teams, you're coming in with some really injured teams oftentimes for some of those good teams, which means there can be upsets. And it's like you completely lose all the rewards for finishing so high in the standings. And so from the matchups you get, and you have to play in the first round, it just seems really unfair to me, to those top teams, to have to deal with all those things and still be expected to continue through. Now, of course, yeah, I mean, it's you expect that out of the top teams, but it just doesn't seem fair, and especially with how tough the NHL is. Like, it's a rough sport, and the number of injuries. I don't like the fact that it feels like you get penalized for being a good team on a whole bunch of different fronts. So I don't like. So I'm going to actually disagree with what I originally started the stream with. I don't like the current format for that reason, upon further thought. So I like the idea of a change, but I think the change needs to encompass something where the top teams get a rest. They deserve it. If it's just one team, like in the NFL, that might be fair. So one team per conference. Maybe two, like in baseball. I kind of feel like that's more accurate for the NHL, because just one team seems too little as far as I'm concerned. I think teams need to be better rewarded for a good regular season. So the top two teams from the conference and probably keep it divisional, maybe. We'll have to work backwards to figure that out, but I think at the very least 2 teams should get a bye per conference, in my opinion, to be fair to regular season performance and to give teams a rest as a result of that performance. So then we'll have to figure out backwards what to do with the rest of the teams. So I would say I would do like the Major League Baseball. That round, I guess I should talk about this round first. So for in the bye that they get through, it should always be, if it includes the top teams, it should always be best of 7, in my opinion. So whatever it is, so if there's 2 teams that get a bye per conference, that round needs to be 7 games, no matter what, in my opinion. And then everything 7 games from there. So just to, chop off the what we spoke of with, in baseball as an example, what we spoke of with the AHL, NFL doesn't really apply because it's just 1 game. It needs, like I said, it needs to be 7 games as soon as it includes the teams that get the bye. So there's that. That's what I would like to see at the very least. Now, going backwards from that, so maybe I should get this on a document. So we've got 1 versus something, 2 versus something, 1 versus something, 2 versus something. So we've got that structure at least for that round. So that's 8 teams. So that would be the, what do we call it currently? Second round. So yeah, we'll still call it, I guess, second round. And then from there, see, this is tough because I have to figure out both directions at the same time. Okay, so I don't like the NBA format because 1 game to determine going through, I just don't think that's fair. So we'll chop off at least the 1 game portion of the NBA as out of my consideration. Now, like I said, the 3-game series, I'm not against that. So this is kind of like going back to the COVID year, at least the 1 year, where it had best of 3. Anyways, so kind of having something like that I actually don't dislike. Okay, so if 2 teams get a bye, and so that's 4 teams in total. So we need to have the outcome as 4 teams in the previous round. So maybe that actually, yeah, that kind of makes sense too. So you get maybe not. This is super tough because maybe it should be only one. So what I was just my thought process was I was thinking maybe the there's play-ins and then some teams get a bye, and then there's the second round and other teams get a bye. So the first and second from each conference. But that much of a bye and that long of a time frame to wait, I don't know if I like that. Man, this is tough. So if we get rid of those, yeah, you know what? Because then we'll have to. So scratch that. So this will have to be the first round. So first, second, first and second. So what we'll do then is 1, 4, 2, 3. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, because I'm doing this... So I'll still label it as first round. So I'm just doing one conference, and then you would just replicate this for the other conference. So it's the play-ins that the first and second get a bye from. We eliminate... What was it? So all those, so you play teams either 3 or 4 times in your division. Substitute it all down to 3, and then the first and second place teams for each division don't have to play those extra games. So it's just a shorter regular season for the better teams, and then it's a longer regular season for the worse teams. But those are technically, so it's play-ins. So the regular season is the same for everybody. The play-ins are for the lesser teams, and then the playoffs are for the better teams, if that makes sense. So it'll make sense when I kind of put things through visually. So, so then to get 2 teams... for each division, you need 4. Because, I don't... So what I was debating on is, do you have 2 blank spots? Or do you just have 1? So to do the top 3 teams not having to do the play-ins, depends on how much you want to reward the third place team. And to be honest, I don't think you should. To finish third in your division is not that much of an accomplishment, in my opinion. To finish first and second, it is. So you could argue whether or not the third place gets a bye out of the play-ins, but I say they don't, because I don't think finishing third in your division is all that much of an accomplishment. So first and second, yes. Third, no. So then in that case, what we do for the play-ins is three versus 6. Or wait, so wait. 3 versus 6. And then 4 versus 5. And then reseeding. I think that kind of makes sense. Oops. So you reseed lowest to here, reseed highest to here, and then do we keep it divisional? See, this is where if you have like a... So third... No, so it can't be third versus sixth best. So how many teams are in each division? So it's 8, 16, 8, 16. Yeah. And to have the top 6 going through after a long season, that doesn't seem fair either. Huh. So maybe do it this way. So maybe, yeah, so Okay, so the first instinct for me was you go third best in the division. Actually, that does that make sense? Because you'll get the rivalries in the first round. Sorry, not in the first round, in the second round, because one and two, and whoever, I mean, maybe it might be another whatever, but you're still going to have a divisional team. That, yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. So the third, um, okay. So it goes, uh, so sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to format this and think about it at the same time. Um, so third division, first, second wild card. So no, it's first, third. No, wait, first, fourth. No, first, third. 3. Three div. 6. 5. Wait, look, 6. 5. I think this works. Second. Yeah, okay, so I think this makes sense. So if you can kind of follow my logic. So first and second of each division get a bye into the playoffs, which is, so this is just one conference. And then you'd have this duplicated in the, like, let's say this is Eastern, you'd have this duplicated into the Western Conference. Then in the play-ins, you have the third best divisional get the best seeding in each of their divisions. The higher of the two gets the worst team, and so we're pretending that's this division. And then we're pretending this is the second best division. And so the best division gets the lowest wild card spot. The second gets the fifth wild card spot. And then it goes first, third, second, fourth. So the winner of these is that right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah. So the winner of that. So the winner of. I'll make this bigger. So 8 teams per conference, 16 teams between the two conferences. This is still within the same conference. So it goes first. So the top team in the division gets a bye into the playoffs. Top team in this division as well. This division too. This division. Wait. Oh, sorry, because this is. There's only 2 divisions per conference. How do I. So first, second of the division, first and second of the division, third of this division, third of this division, and then the rest are all seeded based on standings. Okay, and then so these all get, so the ones on the far left here, they all get, so this one, this one. Actually, let's just highlight them. Okay, so just to make sure you're following, so WC stands for wild card, div for division. So this divisional guy stays in this side, so in their division side. This division guy stays in their division side. The lowest of all the highlighted, so all the ones in yellow, the lowest of all those goes against the highest division, the highest of the conference, doesn't matter who it is. And then the next lowest goes against the next best, but the first of their division, and then you seed accordingly. So, so let's just say that third divisional wins this round. Let's say third wild card wins this one. Let's say let's say fifth wild card wins this one, and second wild card wins this one. So then to reseed according to what I'm talking about, and let's say that this guy finished first, and this guy finished. Actually, let's just not highlight it. So this guy finished first. This guy finished second. Let's say this guy's third. And then this guy's fourth. So then it goes... actually, wait, let's just, instead of highlighting... Okay, so those are the conference points, who's better of them. So then, based on these matchups, the highlighted ones, and then these outcomes, the one in between, you take the lowest wild card team, put it against the highest of all the teams that get a bye into the playoffs. So this would be against the fifth wild card. Since these guys finished second, they would play the third wild card. These guys finished third in the conference, so they would play the second wild card. And then these guys would play the third divisional team. So if that makes sense of how it all filters through. So you reseed based on the conference. So you make the bracket in the play-ins based on the division. You reseed based on conference performance into the playoffs. That's this round here. And then from there, well, there isn't any reseeding because it's just the winner that goes through. But you stay divisional from there. So that's where it's kind of like a mix between the current wild card format and a play-ins. And then, so this would be best of 3. and then this would be best of 7 as normal. So everything goes back kind of to normal here. It's just that these teams don't get buys into like, you don't automatically get into the playoffs. Only the top 2 teams of each division get into the playoffs. So anyways, that's kind of what I would want to do. I think it makes the most sense based on my logic. So my preference is you have to have a best of for any wild card spot filling if you don't do it based on standings. And for play-ins, likewise, you have to have some best of something. And then if you're eliminating the regular season games that would have been, so some teams in your division you play 3, some teams you play 4 currently. If you get rid of those games, basically it adds up to approximately 3 games. I mean, it's I think it's more, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, that's kind of unimportant. It's basically essentially the same as 82 games for these teams that have to do play-ins. For the teams that finish first and second in their division, they only play, well, it's going to be, I think it's 79 games or something like that. So they just get a couple extra games off to prepare for the playoffs and rest their players, whereas the other teams have to actually play more and could get injured. So I think it makes it harder on them, easier on the other teams. There's 4 teams that get a bye, so it's the top 4 in each conference, which makes it kind of fair. So 4 teams per conference, so 8 teams in total, get a bit of a rest of, compared to now, approximately 3 games. Whereas the other teams have to play through it. Then it makes it that they're weaker teams going against the better teams, which actually applies the standings more appropriately. And then that way those top teams actually have an appropriate shot at getting through. There's also maintaining the divisional play. So these two would play against each other in the first round of the playoffs that I've made here. And then so that way you keep the divisional rivalries, you keep the conference rivalries, you keep the Stanley Cup, one conference versus another. You keep everything basically the same, except you shorten the regular season for the better teams and make it longer for the worse teams. Also, the play-ins incorporate more teams, which brings in more fans to the, well, these would be play-ins, but playoffs basically, or playoff atmosphere to the games, which I think would probably increase revenue too. I think it has the best of all worlds. So this is kind of like, it's a mix of a bunch of different formats, and I think it makes the most sense based on, again, my logic, my preferences, so maintaining some of the norms, giving some preference to regular season performance, increasing the length of the playoffs by adding in play-ins. There's a whole bunch of different layers, and I've already commented on all of them. You just I'd have to list them all to go over all the benefits of this change. So anyways, I think this makes the most sense. I think it's if you're going to make a change, it's the most fair to everybody. The league doesn't lose out on revenue from number of games. I think in the end, I would actually have to do the math to check, but I think it's more or less the same number of games. You probably would increase the revenue from having the play-ins because you could charge higher ticket sales. You could also charge for merchandise for the play-ins, like unique merchandise for play-ins. So I think it would be more profitable, more fair based on the regular season. And like I said, I think the best summary is it's the best of all worlds. Best of all the other leagues, best of this league. So anyways, so that's kind of my opinion. That's what I would do. It's maybe slightly confusing, but it's no more confusing than anything else. So, yeah. I think that's the best spot to leave it. I don't think there's much more to say. Basically, I wouldn't... Long story short, I prioritize regular season performance. Those teams need to be better rewarded. So first I would say, sorry to go back a step because there's so many layers to this. First I would say don't change anything unless you've got really good logic and you've incorporated, fairness and a whole bunch of things into it. Don't make any changes. If you are, maybe 1 versus 8 is probably the most fair change. I wouldn't add in play-ins unless you have some buys like the ones that I just mentioned. And not as many as the NBA has. I think that's too many. So I have to follow the steps that I've already explained. So basically, don't change. If you are going to change and you're going to maintain a lot of the things, go to 1 versus 8. If you're going to add in play-ins, have 4 teams, no more than 4 teams, and I would say no less than 4 teams getting a bye. And I think that actually summarizes it. And I wouldn't do, so it has to be a best of something. Best of 5 is too much, I would argue. Best of 3 is probably most fair. And then that way you're having 4 of 8 teams have to play a best of 3 to get into the best of 7s that continue on. And I think that's fair because the bottom 4 teams of each division, the third place team of each division, and then going for you call them wild cards, the next 6th place teams to make 8 in the play-ins. I forget where I started my sentence. Anyways, to have 4 go into the playoffs and to have the remaining teams have to do a play-ins is, I think, fair because then it weights the regular season appropriately. Because 4 teams to be guaranteed slotted into the playoffs, I think is the most fair. 6 teams is too much. less than that's not enough. To make the rest of the teams have to do play-ins, I think is fair to do the seedings accordingly. Makes sense, because then it's basically going to a conference 1 versus 8, but with 4 teams moving on already. So then it's like a 5 versus, what would that be? 5 versus 12 kind of thing. And then filtering through basically. And I think that's fair, because those 5th place teams, you didn't finish in the top 4. So you should have to do something to make it in. And you're playing against the worst team, so you should be able to win a 3-game series. You could make it a best of 5 if you really want to add even more integrity to it. And that would add in revenue to the league. But those teams would be playing a lot of games. Not much more. Maybe it would be 84 games in a season. It's not that crazy of a difference. So you could do that. You can make it a best of 5 to add even more integrity. Best of 3 is probably good enough because of the seedings. About, like a 5th place against a 12th place, there should be enough of a gap that the higher seed should win. Then all the ones that are kind of in the middle, they're close enough anyway, so it doesn't really matter whoever would get through. So I think like I said, I think it's the best of all worlds. But then otherwise, if you're not going to do that, do 1 versus 8. If you're going to make a change, otherwise keep it the same. I think that's the best way to simplify it, as much as I can simplify it, and as complicated as it actually is. So anyways, so that's it. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. If you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. Otherwise, channel homepage has upcoming streams. Should be 3 p.m. Eastern on the days that I do stream. Again, as a reminder, I'm going to be doing a series recap at the end of this round, and then series previews for the next round. So that's going to be all based on when this round ends. So the series recap, I'm going to do the entire conference one day, the other conference the next day, and previews one day, previews the next day. It depends on how many days are in between. I might do, if it's only 2 days in between, I might do maybe some recaps earlier, split them up more and do them over more days. I don't know. Anyways, we'll figure it out based on scheduling and times between each rounds, and I'll post it on my channel in upcoming streams. That'll tell you when the next stream is. And so just tune in there to figure that out. Otherwise, if you have notifications, it should hopefully tell you when things are coming up. But if not, have a look at the channel homepage. But anyways, that's the plan moving forward. And any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions, same thing. And we'll see you once this round ends and we cover the recaps and then the previews for next round. So, and at this point, I can't really even comment on my predictions because some of the series are tied. Most of it I'm either correct so far or undecided if they're tied. I think so. I'm only really wrong on my predictions with the Islanders being down right now, and there's not enough games really for me to say that I'm wrong for the Tampa series. And I think that's it, really. Otherwise, I'm pretty close. So it's just so undecided yet that I can't even really comment too much on my predictions. But anyways, so that's it for today, and we'll see you guys once this round's over.